I will give a few words from me, Barbara. I'm guessing that most of you have been watching the news, as I have. I'm watching it more than I ordinarily would because my husband Hal is glued to CNN. I can't say 24/7, but maybe 27. So if I want to go in and sit with him, the news is on. It's hard to watch. So much pain in the world, so much suffering for people. Ukraine right now is taking a back seat to Israel and Palestine. But we know that the bombings are still going on in Ukraine and Russia also. So many of you have written to me, you've written to Aaron, saying, how can we help? What do we do? So I'm just going to give you Aaron and let him speak to his thoughts about this. My blessings and love to you. I am Aaron. And it is a joy to be with you tonight. Thank you for joining us. As Barbara said, many of you have been writing and asking, how can we help? Why is there so much suffering? Is it all going downhill? Why do humans experience pain, anger, heavy emotions at all? These are some of your questions. So I just want to speak to this a bit tonight. I'm not usually so keyed to current events, but so many of you are very caught up in what's happening in the world and with music. And it's not just the hatred and the anger, it's the environment. I have not yet heard the results of what happened in Acapulco. But I know there was a severe, very severe hurricane there this morning. I assume many are affected. And all over the world. First, you may think you are the names I see on the screen. And of course, that's part of who you are. In one past life, I was named Aaron. And I've picked up that name to use because Aaron was a kind man and a wise teacher. That doesn't mean I, as Aaron, am a wise teacher, but I hope to be. At least a wise friend. But I was also Nathaniel. I was a Buddhist monk whose name need not be shared. And hundreds of other beings. And I am none of those beings. You, right now, are an expression of the essence of your being, which in itself is an expression of the divine essence, all that is. God, goddess, unconditioned, however you would mean it. So your higher self, if we might call it that, is an expression of the divine, and you are one expression of that higher self. You come into the incarnation with physical, mental, emotional, and spirit bodies. They are temporary. They are the expression of this moment, and yet they are grounded in karma. You are expressing in this way for a reason. You have come in. I want to move the screen over a bit so I can see your faces better. You have come in, all of you, with certain primary intentions. And because you are old souls, those intentions usually include being of service in the world, opening it more deeply to love, and finding the power of the love expressed through yourselves, helping to support others who are lost in fear, pain, or anger. Living with more wisdom and kindness. These are some of the intentions that brought you here. Then you say to me, moaning, Aaron, why do we have these heavy emotions? Well, how can you help to resolve heavy emotion throughout the world and bring in more light, more loving kindness and compassion, if you do not have the heavy emotion in yourself as catalyst? You have to practice responding to what evolves through you and the world. And it is truly an evolution from a darkness into light. And yet, that evolution is on a linear plane. On the ultimate level, you are, and everything always has been, light. There is nothing but light in the ultimate sense. But in the relative sense, of course, there is darkness, fear, anger, hatred, pain, confusion. Your world has been blessed for thousands of years with loving beings who are able to demonstrate loving kindness in the face of darkness and hate. They are the teachers. You are the teachers because you are learning to hold loving kindness where there has been hatred. Sometimes heavy emotions in Buddhism are referred to as poisons. And I understand how they can be felt as poisons. No one wants to feel terror, anger, or greed. And yet they are also teachers. You have agreed to come into a human body, experience what the human experiences. If you had not thusly agreed, you would have stayed on the higher planes. You would not have come into a body. You knew when you came into a body that you were going to experience human feelings, joy and sorrow, but also greed and anger and hatred and fear. And joy generosity, happiness. The human experience is like no other in this respect, in that you are on a plane, the earth plane, in which there is the potential truly for full liberation, to know without any question what you are in essence. What is temporary, arising out of conditions and passing away. And what is, let's just say, what remains, the essence of all being. Occasionally, there is a human who has a sudden awakening experience and has the capacity to carry that awakening experience through into the human lifetime and truly live it. The Buddha was one such, Siddhartha Gautama. He was not born awake, but born with a readiness to awaken. And in this, he inspires, because you are also born with the readiness to awaken. The Buddha opened to full awakening in that lifetime. It would be pleasant, certainly wonderful, if each and every one of us opened to that full awakening. The wonderful thing is you do not have to, for the human lifetime is still to be beautiful, rich, and filled with wonder, filled with joyous gifts. Each bit of, let's put it this way, Barbara's windows now at the end of the summer are somewhat covered with dust, dirt from the rains and so forth. And today some time was spent by Barbara and others washing the windows. Washing them so that the glass becomes clear again. This, in effect, is what you are doing. At a certain point, you would notice how smudged the windows are becoming. And you make the decision, I choose clarity. I choose depth of understanding, which leads me to depth of the open heart. And so I will wash the windows. You wash the windows through mindfulness, seeing what obscures clear seeing, and seeing with that obscuration right there, the window is already clear. You notice Barbara did not have to break out the glass today and install new glass, only to bring the cleanser and to wipe the dirt off, the obscurations. This is all you are invited to do in the lifetime, to pay attention to the obscurations that bring up fear, hatred, greed, and other such heavy emotions. To gently inquire, from whence has this arisen? Even without it knowing from where it arose, to hold the intention to clear it. Because the clear glass is always there. Barbara was talking to a friend earlier this week who was born in Israel. For many of her family still living in Israel, so she has close connections there. But she has lived for many decades here in this country. And she has the background of being a Dharma teacher. So she's deepened and a lot of wisdom has washed the windows. And yet she pointed out this week, the windows, I know the presence of the clear windows, but as soon as I wipe them clean, they're smattered with mud again because I close up with anger, with fear. She asked me, Erin, how do I move past the fear? The way all of you move past the fear, the anger and heavy emotions. Practice. You probably know that joke of the young man with a violin on the subway saying, tapping the bypasser and saying, how do I get to Carnegie Hall? And the bypasser says, practice, my friend, practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? How do you get to awaken to mind? Practice. Let's look at some of the facets of such practice. First is the intention to live your life in a harmless way, with kindness to all beings, wishing harm to no being. Now, I understand that it can be challenging without wishing harm to any being. How do you say no to a being? How do you say no to Hamas coming in and murdering in such a terrible way? How do you say no to the Nazis who came in filling the world with their hatred? Can we find ways to say no without wishing such beings harm? It's a complex question. What is harm? Some years ago, people raised a question to me. Erin, if you were sitting in the back of a room, a schoolroom of children, just behind some kind of screen, invisible, and a gunman came into the room with an automatic weapon and said to the children, to the teacher, to the class, I'm going to kill you all. And you could really tell he was seething with hatred and he meant it. And these are powerless 5, 6, 7-year-olds. But you, Erin, if you had a gun, what would you do? I didn't really have to think about it. I would have shot him. Now, I am an awakened being and have the capacity within me to shoot and kill him without hatred. And yet, I still carry the karma of killing him. And I am responsible for that act. Even if I act out of a desire to protect, it's complex. You have to have examined every other option. For Israelis right now, there is both the deep intention to protect their homeland, and there is anger. The karma born out of anger simply breeds more karma, more negativity. The karma born out of loving kindness that says no, without question to me, recognizing that this gunman would have terrible karma if he killed 30 children. I can't say I'm killing him for his own good. I'm killing him because I must not allow him to kill 30 innocent children. I am responsible for killing him. And that responsibility goes long and broad. On other planes, I will be responsible. I would be responsible to become one of his teachers, to try to befriend him, to try to help him understand why he had heated and why I had killed, not to justify the kill, but to help him take responsibility for himself being killed. Unfortunately, most gunmen in the world are not ready to understand that. They simply heat and go out and kill, whether it's killing one person or a nation. What we're left with then is our responsibility coming into this earth plane as awakening beings with a deep desire to do no harm, to purify the heavy emotions in ourselves, so that when we speak up and say no to negativity, we are not saying it from a place of hatred, but a place of deep compassion. We see this beautifully in Gandhi and his actions. His actions, for the most part, did not create unwholesome karma for himself or any other being. Other beings may have had unwholesome karma through hatred of Gandhi, but that was not Gandhi's doing. They are responsible for their hatred. Coming back to the more practical, we started with the question, why are we in these human bodies with physical pain, mental, emotional? Does life really need to be this challenge? And I say, yes, it does. Because without these challenges, how would you practice? Each time you face such a catalyst and find a bit more spaciousness in your heart, not damning the other person, not heeding the other person, not even fearing the other person, but still knowing it is my responsibility both to say no and to say no from a place of clarity, of love. And that does not excuse any acts I do that harm another. I am still responsible for those. But the more I can act and speak from a place of deep wisdom and compassion, the less likely I am to get my own karmic field entangled in it and to bring their karma and karmic field into it. But rather to be able to speak to them face to face, heart to heart, saying, no, you may not do that. They might say, who's going to stop it? I am. Because I love you, and I love the people that you would attack. You all know the difference between feeling great anger in another person and feeling deep peacefulness, even love in another person. For me, one of, perhaps the greatest teacher, watching Yeshua say no to people who were getting ready to be violent to other people, or to animals, to anything. And I cannot say never, but almost never watched him say no with anger. He never judged another. Instead, he spoke to that which was clearest, to the love that was right there in their hearts, along with the anger. And this is what was so powerful, because when somebody speaks to you, not shaming, not heeding, putting you down in any way, but respectful, speaking to the love within you that's right there behind the anger, and inviting it out. You may still commit that violent act, but gradually, if it happens time after time, you move your way through it. There's an interesting story about the Quaker William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania. At first, he was a soldier, and he became a Quaker. He was asked, how long, somebody asked him, who was becoming a Quaker, when do I have to put down my sword? And William Penn looked at this man and said, when you cannot carry it anymore. And this is a wonderful metaphor for us all. When do I have to put down my hatred, my prejudices and judgments? When you cannot carry them anymore. What allows us to not carry them anymore is a deepening wisdom in the non-duality of all that is. Not just of beings, but of the states like love and fear, joy and sorrow. When we go through these seeming dualities and find the deepest place in the heart that is simply filled with awe at the variety of presentations into human and other living form, and can rejoice in the differences, we begin to see how people become laid into deeper and deeper fear and reactivity. And we become increasingly able to rest in a place that simply says no. Barbara would certainly acknowledge that she is not an awakened being. Awakening, yes, as many of you are, but not awakened. And 50 years ago, she was far from that. But in the 1960s, some of you know, she went on freedom rides and was in other situations, sit-ins and so forth, where she needed to face people who were murderously angry, who would happily have killed her if they could have gotten to her. On the freedom rides, there was not so much a person-to-person expression, but the whole bus of people. But at times, she tells one story of a sit-in in a small, very southern restaurant. where people other than white people were not permitted. She tells how 4 of them went in. She and another white young man and a black couple. They simply walked in the door very early in the morning. Nobody there to stop them. No breakfast crowd yet. And a crowd of people saw them go in. Some people saw them go in and a crowd gathered. They had stones and bricks, sticks. They were roaring with anger. Come out, waving their sticks. The 4 of them sat there and meditated for almost half an hour. They knew that their only protection was love, and that love might not be enough to protect them physically. They could still be killed. According to Gandhi's teachings of satyagraha, soul force, they understood that it was vital for them to forgive those who would kill them and have compassion for them before they even undertook this task. Or they were simply creating more unwholesome karma for themselves and others. So these 4 people sat in the restaurant for half an hour, meditating and making sure that they were centered in that place of compassion for those screaming outside, literally for their lives. At a certain point, in agreement, they just looked at each other and stood up, took hands and walked to the door. Their love would protect them karmically from any negative or unwholesome karma, but it could not necessarily protect their lives. But when they walked to the door, and Barbara tells how she was able to make eye contact with some of the crowd, not in a judgmental or stare them down way, but just compassionately looking into those eyes, loving them as best she could. And yes, there was fear. Of course, there was. She was human. Not only human, but simply 21-year-old human. So there was fear. People looked at the 4 of them and just dropped their stones, their bricks, cast their eyes down. They were ashamed. So it was not Barbara's intention to create shame in others. But they could not meet her love. But they learned something. The 4 of them walked down the steps from the restaurant, and the crowd just parted. They walked through and into the waiting car, drove away. I'm sorry Barbara can't tell you the story, but it's too hard for her to come back into the body and then me to take it over again. Sorry I'm telling it for her. But she tells how she learned that day, without any doubt, that love is the strongest force in the universe. And yes, that there's no guarantee that it would keep her alive. And that was okay. She did what she needed to do. So this was different than the freedom rides, where there was not so much direct eye contact one-on-one. Each of you has been in a situation in your life, or many situations, where you were faced with people who were very angry, very afraid. Some of you have dealt with that in highly skillful ways, some in ways that were less practiced and therefore less skillful. But of course, you had to do it time and again to learn to be skillful. For Barbara, it was not a first, but an early presentation in this lifetime. But she understood it from past lives. Some of you may understand it already, deep in your being. Others may not yet understand it. You choose to be human and allow the experience of human emotions, to learn how to be present in a spacious way with those emotions and not condemn yourself. Because until you cannot condemn yourself for anger, how can you not condemn others? There is nothing wrong with what's happening on earth. It's a learning place. You knew when you came, it was going to be a very tough course of learning. But you agreed to come. You knew that you had wonderful helpers, your guidance, and your human friends, the great masters. So many to help you remember you have the capacity for love. No matter what terrible things may happen, you have the capacity for love. It's so important for you to remember that capacity. To live that capacity as best you are able. Amongst some Dharma teachers, the idea has come forth of what they have called a bigger container. The ABCs of living. And I've picked up on that phrase long ago, but I did not coin the phrase. How do we create a bigger container? The example I've often used is if you sat in a 4x4 box, just 3-foot high walls, and you sat on the floor. And I walked up with a tarantula in my hand there, a big tarantula. And I reached in and put it on the floor. Most of you would leap out of the box. A few of you might say, oh, how lovely a tarantula, but most would leap out of the box. For those who happen to love spiders, picture a poisonous snake or a rat with sharp teeth. Whatever scares you. You're living your life in a 4x4 box, and fear comes up. But then we move the whole exploration, move you into a 20-by-20-foot room. There's a door on either side. I walk in one door with a tarantula and I put him down on the floor. You'd probably be able to stay put for at least 5 seconds or so. Once he started crawling toward you, you might get up and run to the other side of the room, or you might run out the door. Now let's change it again. A gymnasium-sized room. Picture yourself sitting against one wall, and they come into the far side and put the tarantula down on the floor. No promises about the spider. That it will or won't bite, will or won't harm. I leave it to you. So you watch him start to crawl, and it's a big container. Perhaps 2/3 of the way across the room. He comes. And at that point, you stand up. And as he comes toward you, you walk around the edge of the room and over to the other far wall. Watch him go to the wall where you were sitting. Wander around there a bit, and then as he walks back toward you, when it feels like he's getting too close, you get up and move again. You keep watching him. There are others in the room. Some of them have no fear of him. You see him climb up on some laps. You see people stroke him. He climbs down off the lap and goes somewhere else. So you begin to get a sense, maybe this spider does not mean to kill me or harm me. Maybe I can meet him with compassion. Maybe I can understand that he might also be afraid. Whether it takes you an hour or a day or a month, can you see that eventually you would probably learn to just sit still and allow him to climb on you and explore what it's like to be there with a tarantula? Can you see that? A bigger container. Your meditation practice gives you the tool for a bigger container. Mindfulness of fear, feeling the body contraction. Perhaps mindfulness of anger, of vulnerability. And from that vulnerability, fear, and wanting to strike out at the other. So it's very useful when there's something on the news that causes contraction, fear, or anger, to just take a deep breath and ask yourself, in what ways can I invite the experience of a bigger container? Right here with wanting to get away, what will invite more presence and an open heart? We remember that this presence is your true being, and the open heart is your true being. You don't have to get or create anything. You simply move past the contracting emotions, slip through into the place of love. This is the essential learning for most of you in this human lifetime. I noted before that there is both the linear awakening and already present awareness of the awakened heart and mind. Gradually, you learn to trust that this heart is here, has always been here. You thus do not negate yourself, don't judge yourself when there is fear or when heavy emotion arises. But remember how to make space for that fear, for that anger, or even greed or impatience or jealousy or any emotion. It does not mean you won't feel the emotion. Sharing a bit from Barbara again. Last month, with no fault to any caregiver, Hal was standing, as he often does, at the bar in his gym room where they change his clothes, holding himself up while they put on some clothes for him. And he just could not hold himself up. He gave no indication. He just collapsed onto the floor. His right leg folding under him. His right leg is the paralyzed and weak one. He created a severe sprain a lot of pain. He could not stand on the leg. X-rays showed nothing broken. Soft tissue injury. Meanwhile, he could not stand. Usually, they help him to dress by his standing while the caregiver washes, bathes, and cleans him. You can clean him lying down on his bed, but it's much harder. If he can stand and can lift one foot to put it into the trouser leg and then lift the other foot, it's much easier and faster. That's how he's done it for the past 5 years. So Barbara, at considerable cost, and with the recommendation of several knowledgeable people, bought a lift with a vest that goes around as a proboscis to lift him up so all the weight is not on his feet. So if his leg would buckle under him again, he won't fall. He's meant to stand with it, not dangle like a fish on a fishing line. But if he loses his balance and they're busy with their hands bathing him and can't catch him in time, he won't fall. All the caregivers learned how to use this lift, all but one, who said, oh yes, I've used this in the hospital and in nursing homes. I know how to use it. So last week, she came in for his shift to take care of Hal, and it was her mate to put him to bed. Barbara asked her again. She asked her earlier in the evening, do you need one of the others who has been using it to come in and show you? No, I've got it. She asked again at bedtime, do you need help? No, I've got it. You know how to use the lift? Yes. So half an hour passed, and the caregiver had not come out to tell Barbara Hal is ready for bed. Barbara went into Hal's bedroom and found him lying on the floor. And the caregiver was putting his pajamas on the floor. Barbara asked, why is he on the floor? Well, he fell. And so I'm just getting him dressed here, and then I'll get him in bed. How did he fall? How could he fall with a lift? She didn't see the lift in the room. Oh, I wasn't using the lift. I was just holding him. I don't think in Barbara's lifetime, because clearly I've known her since she was a baby, I don't think I've ever seen her this angry. Her whole body shook with anger because she felt she had been lied to and deceived, and it was putting Hal at terrible risk. She felt helpless. She felt enraged. She simply walked out of the room. She knew she could not speak from that place of anger. She called downstairs to the caregiver who lives in the house downstairs, but is not always on duty, but he was home. He came running up. He said he was angrier than Barbara. He said to her, your Uber is in the driveway, go, I'll get Hal to bed. So he sat Hal up. He lifted him gently up onto the bed. He finished getting him dressed into bed. He came into Barbara and said, please tell me you're going to fire her. And Barbara said, yes, but not while I'm so angry. Barbara needed 24 hours to get past that. She knew she could not speak to this woman who was not due back for another 24 hours. She couldn't speak to her from that place of anger without creating very unwholesome karma for both of them. I meditated with her, inviting a bigger container. And she said, I can't find a bigger container, Aaron. I'm so filled with anger. Just metta, first for herself and for her. Chanting. The different tools you have, the ways that open your heart and ground you into that already existent bigger container. She had to forgive herself for her anger because she was judging herself for the anger. She had to recognize when certain conditions are present, anger will arise. And to acknowledge she did not act to speak out of that anger. She did not do harm. But also she had to stop it right there. She couldn't just say, oh, it's okay, go ahead and take care of him on the floor. So she would have come back into the room and told the caregiver to leave. But the other man was able to do that. Finding the bigger container, finding the love in your heart. And that moment, not the love for this caregiver who was careless with Hal, but the love for Hal, the love for herself, self-respect, the kindness. Each of you contains this in yourselves. It's a powerful force within you, this force of love. And from this place of love, you are able to say, no, this may not continue. But it's a different no from the heart. This may not continue. As I say, Yeshua do so many times. Not with rage and feelings of hatred towards the other, feelings of wishing the other ill. So how do we carry this through to the world situation? We must say no to aggression. What those of Hamas did is inexcusable in any human context. We must say no. We must say no to hatred wherever it appears. But we must find the place in our heart that can speak truth, speak love, not speak hatred back to hatred. We find this through the Dharma practice, through the practices that so many of you have learned from recently, and Barbara and John, for over 30 years. We find it through the Dharma. The Buddha, quoting the Buddha, hatred never resolves hatred. Only love will resolve hatred. And we find it through the confidence that no matter how much anger, fear, and hatred may arise, love is still there because it is your essence. You cannot lose that love. It is your essence. It may be very hard to break through to it at times. As I said, that day it took Barbara 24 hours until the next 36 hours, I guess. Not the next night, but the following 36 hours, till that caregiver came back. And she was able to speak to her about how upset she was. And that the caregiver was going to need to leave her employ. That she did not feel she could trust her without, but she said it without hatred, without rancor. This is what we do. How do we say no to the Nazis of the world, to the Hamas of the world, to the murderers of the world with their machine guns shooting it in schoolrooms of children? How do we say no? Without hatred. But it is the only way. Mindfulness. Remembering the beautiful emotions of generosity, gratitude, loving kindness, patience, and more. Deepening in compassion, taking each heavy emotion that you are assaulted with and saying, thank you, teacher. In this moment, what have you come to teach? And being able to find the place of spaciousness right there with the contracted out. You find it through looking at those who you deeply love, respect, and admire. Beings like Yeshua, like Gandhi or Martin Luther King, other great spiritual teachers, beings who have modeled non-hatred in this world where there is so much hatred. You go to them with earnestness, asking to be taught. You go there in meditation, acknowledging your pain and helplessness, and opening yourself, making yourself vulnerable, and asking to be taught. You all have so much courage to be here in human incarnation at this time. So much love. And I recognize that it is hard, very hard work, but it is what you came for. As you reach deep within yourself, into this heart of love, you connect with the loving kindness of the world. You find that you are there with all the great beings of the world who have practiced and learned love. And that, yes, you can carry this thing, not perfectly, of course, but increasingly with clarity and spaciousness. This bigger container. You learn how to forgive yourself first, and then how to forgive others. You learn how to have compassion for yourself, and then how to have compassion for others. You turn to the great beings and say, help me. From the love of your heart, you are grounding a love into this earth plane, changing the vibration of the earth plane, raising the earth into a higher consciousness. We're in increasingly, and this is not a prediction, this is said from a place of knowing. I cannot tell you how long it will take, only that it will happen. Raising a consciousness on the earth, so that those of a much lower vibration, deeply filled with heat and with intent to destroy others, find the earth vibration increasingly is so uncomfortable that they choose not to come here in incarnation. And thus helping raise the earth into a higher density, higher level of consciousness, a vibration of love. I know you've heard me speak of Yeshua, and most of you have heard him speak, and Mary also. And that Yeshua came to ground this high vibration of love into the earth plane. Because earth was devolving into a lower vibration, caught in increasing negativity. And he came willing to put himself on the line completely, to say, no. Love shall prevail on it, not hatred. And I'm going to say the words. And just as you hear me, I'll pause and say them to yourself. We can't all say them together anyhow. We can't hear each other without echoes. So we're moving to the Metta Sutra. I will not put it up, just say it. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and would know the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and wise and calm and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Can you feel the power of that intention of bringing it up in your heart? May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the sky and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down and free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abide. By not looking to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world. May it be so. So this is a beautiful practice. You are not trying to stop. You've just read the heart sutra. You are not trying to stop a negative emotion from arising, but seeing clearly it has arisen from conditions and is not the essence of your being. And you have the capacity to let it go. And instead to replace that ill will with compassion and loving kindness for all beings. There is no easy path through this. I want to remind you, you are here in incarnation to help bring love, light, and high vibration into this earth plane. The challenges are just that, challenges and teachers. Hello, teacher. What have you come to teach me? And if you can remember, when you feel pushed, instead of pushing back, to just stop and say, hello, teacher. You're unpleasant. I wish you weren't here, but here you are. What can I learn here? In what ways can I open my heart more fully? In what ways can I live with more love and yet still be very clear that I must say no to that which would do harm in the world? If you're persistent with this, just doing that dance with negativity, not pushing back, but finding the power of love within you that can engage with negativity in clear ways. Yes, it could get you killed, but it won't necessarily get you killed. It might teach you a lot and teach others around you so much too. How do we love when everything we love in the world seems to be on the line? How do we hold to the decision to do no harm? And what is harm? To allow that man to shoot the children, that's doing harm. Perplexing. But you are all living it with much beauty and love. I applaud you. Thank you. I am Aaron. I'm going to give the body back to Barbara. Thank you, Aaron. That's it for tonight.